room. Thank you. This is Community Board 2 Landmarks Committee, the first of 2 meetings for the month of July. And it's our first time doing a hybrid meeting. It's going to be pretty much along the lines of what we've had for meetings for the last year, I guess, and more. And the difference is Susan is in the room and she will recognize people who wish to speak among the committee members, and Eugene will recognize people who raise their hands from the public when we get to that part of it. Reminder to the public that the chat is for technical matters such as not being recognized and is not for the use of comments at any time during the meeting and will not be a part of the record. Everyone is encouraged to be brief and confine their comments to questions to the landmark aspect of the application. For those making the presentations, first of all, we have gotten a number of very late applications this month. Would all of you be careful to ensure that we get some application a week before the meeting, and if there needs to be a revision, send the revised version not later than the day before the meeting. It's important for the committee and for the public to be able to review. In giving comparable examples, please ensure that they are from the neighborhood and be clear, if you have the information, as to whether examples that are since designation have been approved by the committee and the commission, more important. Following the presentations, there'll be questions and comments from the committee, board members, committee guests, and members of the public. Members of the public, please indicate where you live in the district and whether you're in the district or elsewhere. The public testimony is limited to 2 minutes. This includes comments and questions, so use your time accordingly. Again, please ensure that the questions and comments are on the landmarks aspects of the application that's being considered. In the business session is for the committee to formulate the resolutions based on the testimony of the public session. Members of the board who are not members of the committee are invited to make final comments at this time. Participation in the business session itself is for the members of the committee only, and anyone is invited to remain and observe. We're ready for the first application. If Eugene, you can elevate whoever's involved with it.
While Eugene is doing the nationals, I'd like to, just for clarity's sake, let everybody in the public and the committee know who we have here in the room. We have committee members, Anita Brandt, Brian Pape, Valerie De La Rosa, and I'm Susan Gammy, the vice chair. On Zoom, as committee members, we have Albert Bennett, Eugene Yu, Bo Riccobono, Brendan Fitzgerald, and our chair, Chanel Stantz. And as community board members, I believe general full board members, we've got Carter Booth and our community board 2 chair, Susan Kent, present. So that's so everybody knows who's here and where. Susan, yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but as a matter of procedure, our bylaws permit all board members who attend a meeting to participate in the business session. So I just want to correct that fact.
Got it.
But, and Susan will identify whoever's going to speak. Apparently, they're not so many, so it's not hard. It's difficult for the members of the public to identify people since their names are not up on the screen, obviously. The first one, 16 Fifth Avenue, a Department of Transportation application to construct, maintain, and use an electrical snow melt system before the entrance of the building. I'd like to say several things about this. First, there is a great deal going on with this address, none of which we're addressing tonight, except for what is in the application that I've just read. This is, it'll explain what it is. What it is not have to do with is the surfacing of the sidewalk, which is a landmarks consideration, and that has been approved at the staff level already. It's before the landmarks committee because we do this otherwise for applications, and they're usually a part of the application and just an adjunct, and this happens to be submitted separately. Okay, thank you. When you're ready, if you'll share your screen.
Thank you, Chenault. So I am trying to promote the speaker for the first application, which is 16 Fifth Avenue. John Carbone, I am promoting you to a panelist. If you would accept the promotion, you will rejoin our meeting. Thank you. So it looks like John is rejoining as a participant, as a panelist. And we'll give him a moment to turn on his video and share his screen.
Good afternoon. I believe, the application, the plan was created by my firm, but in concert with the plan and the full development, the architect of record from Hill West, Sean Dawson, is to present to the committee. So if he can be granted access as a presenter.
Thank you. Sean Dawson, right? Is that the name?
Correct. Hill West.
Yes, I see them in the list, so I am promoting Sean Dawson. Thank you for the
Yes.
correction, John.
Evening, can everyone hear me? Can everybody hear me? Good evening.
Yes, we can hear you. Your volume is a little low, at least on my end.
Okay, I'll try to speak louder. Is that better?
Yes.
So I can easily, if you guys like, I can share the screen. I think this is a pretty straightforward application. Here you can see the filing drawings that were done by John's team, as he said. We have representation of, the building that was approved by Landmarks, the current location as it stands today, and the site plan. This would be the current sidewalk conditions. The proposal is simply to put a snow melt system. It's an electric system below the concrete sidewalk in the vicinity of the entrance path. There's a detail sheet here that might explain it better. So directly in the middle of the concrete slab, there's an electric cable embedded in the sidewalk. It's protected with an outer plastic sheath, and when applicable, it runs underneath the expansion joints. So going back here, you can see what it would be under the sidewalk level. It's 3 overlapping, kind of spiraling electric sheets that melt the snow. It's a electric resistant heat that can be turned on to melt the snow in the middle of the sidewalk.
Thank you. Is it properly described as electric heating cable?
I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, electric radiant heating. Yeah.
Okay, are there questions from the committee?
I have a question. I'm Susan Gammy and I have a question. My question is, in terms of how this heating system affects what one sees on the sidewalk, can you please tell us how this affects the current sidewalk condition visually?
It's completely invisible. It looks like every other concrete DOT traditional sidewalk. It's just embedded inside. You won't be able to tell the difference. It's completely.
So there's no
concealed within the
telltale
sidewalk.
anything then?
No, the only difference is that it will melt the snow. If there happens to get snow in that location and they turn on the electric heat, it'll melt the snow in that location.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. Anita Brandt.
Sorry. First, a quick question. What are the two X's? What do they mean on the floor, on the plan that's on the screen?
So that has to do with the previous existing conditions to the proposed conditions. So this is the current condition. They're basically just indicating the locations of the tree pits.
And the tree is, one is being eliminated, is that correct?
I believe both trees are being eliminated, yes.
I'm sorry?
I believe both trees are being eliminated. Logistically, the trees were being eliminated and given the back and forth with DOT for street furniture, the new street lights that are being proposed, and the spacing of signage, street lights, hydrants. The space is not adequate to maintain those street trees.
And one more question, sorry, quick question. There's an awning that's proposed under a separate application, is that correct, or?
Yeah, that's correct. Part of the original application through Landmarks, what is a canopy awning that is at this entrance location.
I can't understand. What did you say? I'm sorry. Did anyone else understand it? Maybe it's just me. Say it again.
So part of the original application through Landmarks, there is a canopy or an awning over the door at this main entrance portion, basically over the top of the same location as the snow melt. That has already been previously approved through the larger Landmarks application.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, Albert Bennett.
Yes, back to the trees for just a moment. Could you explain again why they have to go?
Given the site logistics and the spacing, there was an application and discussion with DOT for relocating the streetlights. Let's see if I can get to. So between the streetlights and you can't see it, but there's signage. I don't know if I can get in closer, but there's street signage as well. Maybe it's on the. So this is only a narrow portion in front of our building. To the left and to the right, there are fire hydrants, other lighting, and street signs. So given the DOT minimum spacing requirements, the spacing of the trees doesn't work anymore.
Okay, so it's the DOT. Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Doesn't work with the building anymore.
Is there anybody? Oh, Brendan, yes. Brendan Fitzgerald, please speak.
Unmute.
Brendan, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Sean, why is this a preservation issue that we're looking at? I guess I'm missing something.
I'm unclear as to why this is a part of a landmark presentation as well.
The question was before this committee.
Anyway, it's here. Doesn't matter.
Because we were asked to hear it because it's normally a part of Landmarks applications as I explained, is a sort of subsidiary part of them. And we from time to time do an adjunct resolution of no objection to send to the commission to advise them on their issuing a document of some sort to DOT that there's no objection from a landmark point of view.
Sounds simple enough.
Okay, is there anybody else on the committee? Yes, Valerie De La Rosa.
Yes, Valerie De La Rosa. Can you tell us how many trees are being knocked down?
I believe there's two trees. There's two trees.
Thank you.
Okay, are there questions from the public?
Yes, there is one question. Eugene, do you see the raised hand among our attendees?
Yes, Susan, I do. So Jeffrey Rowland has a question. Jeffrey, I am going to promote you to panelist if you would like.
No, I don't need that. I'm perfectly satisfied with just speaking. You can hear me, I hope.
Yes, we can,
hear you.
Jeffrey.
Okay. I have several things that I would like to say, and some of them are questions that will need to be addressed. The first thing I would like to make the committee aware of is there was an article yesterday in the Times about the underground temperature in Chicago having risen by 5.5 degrees in the last 50 years, precisely because of the heat produced by buildings and the basements of buildings. So put that aside for a minute. That is something to maybe talk about. If there is an awning in front of this building, what is the need for the ice melt under the awning? It seems to me that it's redundant, and as it may contribute to the heat of the ground, and that has an issue in terms of shrinking and swelling the ground and raising and lowering buildings and actually causing cracks in adjacent buildings. That's something I'd be concerned about. Two, I would like to know what the power is used in this. What's the wattage and the amperage for the entire feature, and how will it be addressed to age? In other words, people get electrocuted sometimes with salt and things like that do get spilled on the sidewalks from other buildings or tracked there by boots and galoshes. And should the decay happen to the wiring, there could be electrical leaks. I know somebody personally that was electrocuted trying to save their dog over on the East Village, Jody Lane. Some of you may remember the famous young woman that was electrocuted saving her dog because her dog was getting electrocuted. She went to rescue her dog and she herself got electrocuted. And this from Con Edison's electric leaks. So I would be concerned about whether this is needs to be an electric system or whether it should be, in fact, maybe a steam generated system or a hot water generated system. And secondly, I don't even think it's necessary because it's under the awning. Could you address all of those things, please?
I don't know the specifics of the wattage. I believe the wattage of the system is lower. It's significantly going to be lower than anything that Con Ed or any of the Con Ed vaults. I think this is a pretty low voltage system. I think it's well protected, and I believe it'll have a manual shut off. It's not going to be an automatic. It's not going to run all the time. I think it's only it only runs when necessary. I believe, you know, it was a feature that was desired by the client and the design team. So we are attempting to implement it in this location.
So you don't think of it as being redundant under the awning?
That's not for me to say. So I think they feel like it'll be a useful feature and they would like to implement it. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there other
Thank you.
members of the public?
No, there don't appear to be any other questions either for committee or the
Um,
public. Oh, wait, Bo
Thank you,
has,
sir. We will,
sorry, Chanel. Excuse
we'll
me,
move
Chanel.
on.
Bo has his hand up now.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and we can talk about this at our session later, but this is absurd. It is absolutely absurd. We're removing trees, heating the sidewalk for what purpose? So 4 or 5 times a year that it snows, somebody doesn't have to take a snow shovel out. I mean, it's absolutely.
This is for the.
I know, I said that, Chanel. You heard me say that.
Let's have it then, please.
Okay, thanks.
The next application is 3842 Commerce Street.
Chanel, excuse me, Chanel, Valerie De La Rosa has a question
Oh.
too.
Yes, Does local law 97 or local law 84 or 87 cover any of the heated sidewalks? Have you had to look at those to address this? And then I just have a general statement.
My understanding is this is all electric, and those are concerned with carbon uses. So
Thank
this, you know.
And I would just say a general statement is if I understand this isn't a historic district, and this is just a general comment as part of being on the committee. If there's not a, if we're not here to comment on the trees being removed or the use of the energy use underneath the sidewalk, then does this need to be looked at by another committee? I just offer that as a question to the committee to think about for business session. Thanks.
Thank you, Valerie. That seems to be it, Chenault, so we can move on to our next application now.
Okay. Thank you. Eugene, if you'll rearrange the presenters.
Yes.
42 Commerce Street. The application is to install a new entry infill signage and to repave certain areas.
Yes, so this is 3842 Commerce. So I will be promoting Aaron Ruley. If there is anyone else associated with 3842 Commerce, please raise your hand so I can promote you as well.
They sell it, if they sell it.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 3 people rejoining the meeting as a panelist.
Cool. Nice. Like that. Bring it, buddy. Are you leaving? Thank you. Leaving. I'm leaving, buddy.
Eugene, is that full screen for you? How do you see it?
It is, I think more importantly, is the CB2 conference room. So conference room, is that okay for you to see on the screen?
It's a little small. When we get to some other aspects, I think it would be helpful if we could zoom in a bit.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great.
It's probably the photographs that are most important to see. Well.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening, Erin Ruley, Higgins Place, Barth and Partners. We're the preservation consultants for this project at the Cherry Lane Theater. And we're representing the new operators of the theater, which is A24. I'm joined by Morgan Hare. He's a partner at Leroy Street Studio, and they're the project architects. So I'm going to take you through the proposal, and then the team is here to address any questions you might have for the discussion. As soon as I figure out how to make it go. Okay. So here we are. The application is actually for 2 separate buildings. It's 38 to 40 Commerce Street and then 42 Commerce. And those are buildings located on the south side of Commerce between Bedford and Barrow Streets in the Greenwich Village Historic District, of course. And so here we see the overall scope of work, the existing conditions on the left and the proposed conditions on the right. As I mentioned, these are two separate buildings historically. On the left, we see the building on the left is number 38 to 40. That's primarily the theater building. And then the building on the right is number 42. That historically was a restaurant associated with the theater and then was converted to a black box theater later in its life. And so, but originally constructed as early to mid 19th century buildings, and then converted to a brewery, and the number 42 was a stable. And so you all likely know the history of Cherry Lane. It was a longstanding off-Broadway theater. The property has recently changed hands, and A24 is the operator. It will continue to operate as a live theater venue, and as well as hosting screening events. And but this as part of this proposal, interior work converts that black box theater back into a restaurant, much in keeping with its historic condition. And so the intent here is to really have a very light touch. It's a minimal intervention that's inspired by the historic condition. We'll see that throughout the presentation. And all of the interventions are to non-historic or non-original conditions. And so just briefly to run over the scope, there's new infill at the stable entry at number 42, which we see here. Can you see my cursor on the screen or no? Yeah, oops, sorry. Replacing the window at the center bay here. It's currently a vitrine. There's new poster boxes replacing the existing, recladding the existing canopy, and then new signage and branding associated with the proposed theater operation, and then refinishing the existing painted features in a consistent black finish across the facade, which resonates both with the historic condition, but also with the upper floors. And so we'll take a closer look at all of that. Here's just the overall condition, looking in both directions, east and west. The existing conditions largely result from a 2005 approval by the Landmarks Commission for a theater rehabilitation project designed by Mitchell Kurtz. And so the red box office that we see within that open bay here, the red doors, the doors themselves, all of the signage, that was all approved as part of that project. So then just looking, I can zoom in here. You just let me know if you want to see something close in more detail. But here's the existing condition at number 42. So looking sort of frontal view, this is the existing box office that was built as part of that 2005 project. Some glazed infill that extends, that opens onto the lobby beyond. And then that vitrine I mentioned, which will be replaced by a standard double hung window, and then those poster boxes that flank the existing theater entry. And then just oblique view looking into the recess, the open vestibule. This was a stable entry historically, so you can see the sort of expressed brick return within the opening. There's some signage in there, and you can see sort of beyond that with the glazed opening. Of course, in off hours, the theater is shuttered, so there is a security grill that extends down, and this signage dates to that 2005 project as well. And then just looking in the opposite direction, existing lights and signage within the opening, and then looking to the west, there's a sign mounted within the vestibule, and there's a similar sign proposed as part of this proposal. And so here we see a couple of vignettes of the original theater. Again, as I mentioned, the buildings were constructed for earlier uses, a brewery and a stable, and then converted in the 1920s when artists banded together to sort of rehabilitate the whole corner of Commerce Street and Bedford. And as part of that, number 38 to 40 was converted to a theater, and number 42 was converted as a restaurant on the ground floor, and then studios above. And I think we see in both of these views, we're seeing the theater on the left and the restaurant on the right, and this gives you a sense of the spirit of the place. Here are just comparative elevations. I think we'll probably skip over this. We'll talk about it in more detail. All of the work is focused at the ground floor and paving level of the building. So here we are with the proposed scope of work. So starting on the right, again, this is number 42. There's the new infill set within that masonry opening, and we'll look at that in more detail. There's a proposed sign on the pier. It's small and it's replicating a historic condition, and that would be for the restaurant beyond. and new light fixtures, which are consistent with what exists today in terms of their scale. And then that new double hung window, currently it's a vitrine. So there's a wall behind that, and there's it operates as like a menu box or a poster box. And so that'll create a new transparent opening into the space. The new poster boxes that flank the entry. The canopy here is removed just so you can see the entry doors, but that will be reclad. And then the proposed finish across all of the openings, that sort of dark black finish that we'll see is recalling the historic condition. So here is a 1935 view on the left, and this is illustrating the design inspiration. And so we see that consistent dark finish between the bays, and then these slimmer, slightly smaller poster boxes that were existed earlier than the current poster boxes. And so the proposal on the right is really to resonate with this 1935 appearance or aesthetic of the theater. And when the commission, Landmarks approved the infill, so the doors within this arched bay were approved in 2005, they're recalling the doors that are shown here. So we think that this all sort of brings it into alignment to have the signage and infill to be of a compatible generation. So in plan, on the left is the existing condition, on the right is the proposed. We can see the masonry opening at the building line, and here's the existing box office, that red box within the masonry opening, and then the glazed entry there, just set back behind the masonry opening, and then that leads to the lobby, and then this is what was the existing black box theater at the rear of number 42. And on the right, we have the current proposal, which sets back the entry quite a bit more deeply within the volume of the interior space, and creates more of an open reading, recalling that historic openness that existed there. And then the box office and concession stand, it would draw behind the masonry opening. So here you can see that the box office sort of juts out into the opening, but this sort of curves back from the masonry and extends back into the lobby. And that gives you, again, reinforces that open reading of the vestibule, but that curved form also recalls that sort of historic procession through the space. And then you have the open lobby beyond that, and the restaurant at the rear of the property. There's also an entry into the theater from that lobby space. And so in just thinking about the design, it's really inspired by that open courtyard that existed historically, both as a stable and then later as the restaurant once the Cherry Lane was established. And so in these views, we see on the left, the two views show you sort of that open courtyard. And if you can see, it's a little hard to make out here, but there's light coming down from above. So this was an open courtyard, and then there was a light well between what was the front section of the building and the rear section of the building. So there was this void within the building, and that's what we're seeing beyond here. So you always had this sort of transparent view guarded by some sort of gate or screening system back to that rear section of the building. We see that in this view on in the bottom left as well. And then the two views on the right, we see the condition within that alcove. So it had multi-light doors that we see right here. Look at bird's eye view into it. And that gave you access to the stairs that led up to the studios. So there was this sort of textural treatment, the multi-light windows, the exposed brick of that vestibule. And really here is where we start to form the basis of the proposal. So there's the transparency through the space, and then the scale and texture of the doors and exposed brick that we experience as we view it through the historic condition. And here, of course, is the proposal. So looking into that bay, the curved form of that. So it's behind the masonry opening, not extending out past it as it originates at the front facade and then extends back. It's a soft green glazed brick that picks up on the scale and texture of both the brick that exists within that opening, and also those multi-light configurations. And then the glazed opening above the concession stand that look out into the depth of the theater lobby. We also have here that sort of reinstated window, the double hung window in that view. Here, just looking in the opposite direction, again, this continuity of space, the view looking around into the lobby. You see the brick wall extending back. There's a proposed new sign, new sign that matches the existing sign within that vestibule area. And of course, there's a need to secure the space in the off hours of the theater. And so there is a security grille that will be lowered behind the masonry opening, and it is not your standard grille, as you might imagine. It is a sort of finely crafted, textured open work grille, and so it would extend down during the off hours, and then also provide visibility, still that maintaining that transparency into the opening. Here in section, we get to see it, how deeply recessed that really is. So about 9 feet, just over 9 feet before we hit the door. And so we're going to have that sort of continuous experience of the open vestibule extending back until we get to the glazed opening. The existing poster boxes are quite substantial. They occupy almost the full width of that brick pier. And so the intent here is to scale that down a little bit, reduce it slightly in height and width and in profile. So it's not going to have the depth or projection quite as it exists today. And again, that's in keeping with that 1930s aesthetic that existed at the building. These existing poster boxes date to either the late 1950s or early 1960s. They're there by the time of designation, but they did not exist in the sort of the earlier photo documentation of the building. And then here we see just in plan, a detailed plan of the street level, and then extending back into the opening. Here's the existing box office and entry infill, and we can see how that really opens up in the proposed condition. At the building, there are fragments of bluestone paving that exist, and we see that here in green. And so they're also represented in the photographs above, but it's really fragmentary and they're in very poor condition. And then it's surrounded by concrete. And then at the thresholds, we have some granite that was part of that 2005 project. And here's the proposed condition. So a new line of bluestone paving all along the frontage of the building and leading into both the theater vestibule and the open vestibule leading to the restaurant and the primary lobby. And so really just extending that experience of how the openness of the original stable condition and the original restaurant and that sort of permeability between the theater and restaurant and the street. And here's just an overview of all of the materials that have been selected. The unlacquered brass light fixtures. We have the black paint for all of the painted surfaces at the ground floor, and then the infill that green glazed brick to give the sort of texture and reference to the existing brick with a sort of subtle contrast and recession within the opening. And this is the slide I'll leave you on, but here just seeing the evolution from the pre-designation photo showing the existing condition at that time, how we experience the building today, and then on the right, the proposed condition, which I think, as you can see, is really has a very light touch and is minimal in all regards. So I think with that, whatever questions you might have, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Anita Brandt has a question, followed by Valerie Dillon.
Susan, I have one
Oh,
just to
sorry.
get my notes, please. Could you go back to the depiction of the entranceway?
The detail?
What replaces the box office section?
That's one.
There,
Mhm.
that one, please.
Mhm.
Is that window continue to be a box office window?
It does. It's a box office on and a concession stand. So maybe we could look at the plan. It might be helpful, and I
Right,
can
no, it's
zoom in.
just if it functions was the.
It does, box office and concession.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can see that from the.
Yeah.
Okay, and the infill at the entrance is.
I'm gonna go, there you go.
All of this is wood and plain glass.
This within the opening, Chenault, here. This is glazed brick. The green is glazed brick, and this is glass, and then it has an aluminum framed system.
Aluminum, so okay.
Aluminum, black aluminum, yep.
That's it. Thank you, Susan, whoever wishes to.
Okay, Anita Brandt.
Yes, good, thank you. I have two questions and also just a general comment. I think it's really very nice. I liked it. So congratulations on that. And I also like the way you handle the blue stone. My questions are, number one, would you consider finding a way to recess the grill box? I think we're trying to get away from those boxes that house the grill. And the second is, are all the windows existing, the ones on the actual facade, and are they wood?
Okay, so the grill box, are you talking about the poster box?
No, the grill, the roll down grill.
The grill box is, let me go to the section. Okay, so the grill comes down behind the masonry opening. And so it's recessed from the plane of the facade, but it is directly behind the opening. And from a security perspective, I think it's important for the operator to have not an open vestibule during the off hours when there's.
Of course. No, I'm asking, why can't you recess it up into the ceiling? So and you don't.
It is. You won't see the housing. I'm sorry. In fact, there is it's recessed up into the ceiling here, and then there's a signage, a bracket that extends across the whole width of that facade that's occupied by signage. So that'll all be housed. It won't be visible. In any way, and then it'll have a clean appearance on the interior when it is open.
Well, you made the sign look like a box because on the renderings. Anyway, I understand it now. I'm just thinking that's
it's an existing, sorry, this is Morgan here, from Leroy Street Studio. It's an existing sign there, which, yes, there you go.
Yeah, so let's see. There's maybe this one.
Your rendering has the sign above it.
Yes.
Yes. So there is it's almost like theatrical bracing that exists within that opening. I'm trying to get to it. There you go. So you see this framing exists there, and then it mounts banner signage on it based on whatever is happening at the theater at that time. And so that's remaining. And what you're going to have is, let's see if I can jump to this. What you're going to have is this condition at the street. And you can't really see, but the ceiling level is 8 inches, a foot above that. So it'll all be housed up in there. You won't see an expressed housing.
I think you understand my comment, right?
I do, yes.
And your answer, but I don't think this would be a good time to make an improvement there, in my opinion. And the wood windows, are they wood, and what's the wood?
Which window? This window? That's the only one we're replacing. We're only replacing one window, and it'll be wood. Everything else is remaining as it is.
Which window is that?
This is this existing vitrine on the left here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the only one we're replacing.
Thank you.
Valerie De La Rosa.
Thank you. Erin, thank you so much. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for this great presentation. I just want to make a comment that the presentation that the committees had access to, which was sent to us on July 7th, and I noticed kind of in the room here that 3 of the 4 we're trying to pull up. We're trying to align the presentation we have from July 7th with the slides presented. So slide 11, slide 13, slide 14, we don't have in our deck, and then the slide lively images. So the 3 of us here, we're trying to zoom in on those really amazing details that you've provided. Is there any way to get a copy of this updated presentation so we can have it for discussion during this session?
Absolutely. I will email it right now, and I apologize for that. I think, as you know, this is always an issue. I believe that all of the changes that that have been baked into this are juggling, and that's part of my own neuroses as I work my way through a presentation, juggling sheets. But it's more, historical details and context building that we've added in, but there haven't been any substantive changes. We will certainly email that right now. Valerie, do you want to chat me where I should?
Yeah,
because I
you can just send it to me and I can send it to the committee.
Okay. I'm not sure I have your email address because we go through.
I will give it to you. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
It would be best to send them to Florence as all the other.
I can CC Florence on that too, of course.
Okay, Brian Page.
Thank you. Yes, it's a great presentation, and generally, I think it's a big improvement. 2 questions. One is, aren't you required to have the egress door from the apartments to swing out?
Morgan, do you have that one?
It is, can we go to the apartment?
Oh, sure. The plan. That's the best place, right? I'd say.
Yeah, I was going to say the photograph, but
that's
sorry. Okay too.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
I mean, we're not touching any work there. This is the existing. But yes, you're right. It is a requirement.
Yeah, you're touching the entire facade, so I don't think you could use that as an excuse to not improve the safety for the apartment.
Yeah, no, it's purely an oversight. We just, we're not doing any work on the apartment because it's they're rental units. So yes, you're right though.
My second question is on the box office of the new plan. I didn't see any openings in the glass facing the outside. That is outside of the entry door.
So we're using the new double hung window as the box office on the street, as opposed to the old version where the box office was in that red box. Was the opening in the red box.
The curved section is solid glass.
Correct.
No.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you.
While we're on the curved section, I have a question about the green glazed tile. What is the finish on that tile?
It's a kind of a matte finish. It's bison brick, which, do we have a photograph on it? Yes.
Is it
there it is. And it's kind of a matte glazed. You've got it over on the right there.
Sorry. Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
Can you see that?
Yeah. It's a matte glazed brick tile.
Okay, thank you. And I have one other question, which is in regard to the brass light fixtures. What is the inspiration for those fixtures. They look a little contemporary.
They are, I mean, it's a little more contemporary in look than what is there now. They're a nicer fixture. The fixtures that are there now, although they appear historical, are kind of a little flimsy. They're not great.
Yeah, they're sort of dented too. I think,
Yeah.
people have hit them over time. They are very flimsy.
Yeah, no, my question isn't
Yeah.
in regard to the existing ones. It's your choice of.
Yeah, no, we like these because they kind of were a bridge between the existing fabric and the new theater. And it kind of didn't feel like it was too modern, but it's not, overtly traditional.
And they're also just scaled down. They're sort of compact and in profile and projection, and have a sort of minimal impact or effect on the overall aesthetic.
Thank you very much. Albert Bennett.
Yes. So basically, we are losing a black box and gaining a restaurant. Is that correct?
Well, I would say that the black box was established in the 1990s. You are gaining a restaurant, but it was historically a restaurant. From the inception of the Cherry Lane, it was always a restaurant until I believe the 1990s. It might have been transitioned before that, but it was very much a pet project of the previous operator that created that space in the back. And so it isn't necessarily the historical condition, and so it's a modern reflection of what it was historically, this symbiotic relationship of the theater going experience of dining and celebrating what you've just experienced.
Okay, a specific question. Where is the restaurant signage?
It is that, and Morgan, you might want to opine here. I believe the restaurant signage is going to be limited to this small sign on the pier, and maybe perhaps on the return.
Exactly.
Right. Let's get to that
Right.
view. This
There.
one in
Yep.
here. Yeah, so
There.
it's all very sort of subtle and understated, but very much in the experience of how you walk Commerce Street, right? Like if you experience that curve, it feels like the right place and the right level of identity. It's not even though there has been much more signage over the course of the building's history, this is very much resonant with the place, I think.
And unfortunately, I'm sorry, but we didn't get this image of the sign on this drawing, but on this rendering. They're the one on the building, the
right.
flap sign,
But it's
which-
essentially, oh yeah, this is the impost of the pier, but it's essentially that level of signage. Let's see, do I have it in the historic photograph?
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Yeah, right
have it
there.
there.
There's
Yep.
a little plaque sign on the pier, and that's what we would be sort of recalling.
Okay, thank.
Have all the questions been asked?
No, they haven't. Susan Kent, followed by Brendan.
Thank you. Actually, it was my question is somewhat similar to the previous one. That black box space that you are now converting, was that an active theater space that you're now sacrificing? Or was that like just a rehearsal space? It's just that a theater giving up theater space is kind of surprising.
Up until the transfer of the property, I don't know how active it was prior to the sale of the property, but it was constructed as a black box space. I just don't know how. I couldn't share with you the level of activity of how programmed it was.
But it's not actively like programmed. Is that what the sort of the reasoning behind replacing it is?
Morgan, do you have clarity on that?
I don't. I mean, I live in the neighborhood. I live on Leroy Street around the corner. I've never actually seen the Black Box Theater being used as a, as a public theater, only as rehearsal space, but I really don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about that. That's just been my personal experience.
Thank you.
It's a little ratching.
Could I speak to that?
Every play I've been to, been in the other theater.
Right. Me too. Yeah.
Okay, could this be the last on the question of the interior? Please.
Albert, please.
Yeah, Albert.
This is not a question. I just want to state that I saw not very long ago, a friend of mine from Chicago came to perform in that space.
Okay, thank you, Albert.
Wait, I think we
That's
have
all apart from- Sorry.
Mary Gerloff of who is a long-standing part of the Cherry Lane institution. I don't know if she can raise her hand and speak. She could talk to or speak to how that space was used and up to the most recent history, if that's if you desire.
Yes, and Mary Gerloff is in the panelists, so she can definitely.
Mary,
speak.
maybe just raise your hand. But I think, and A24 has brought along much of the Cherry Lane staff to bring this to fruition, and that continuity is important and critical to the overall success of the entire project. Oh,
have we found
it's not
the person?
She said she's raising her hand, but it's not working.
I see her name.
Can we then move on?
She's telling me it was an active space. So
it's an interior.
It is an interior question.
And we should move on with what's before.
She is saying that it was an active space, but we know that this is an interior use question, so we'll move this along. And Brendan Fitzgerald has been very patient. Brendan.
Thanks, Erin. I have two preservation questions and then one design question. Preservation, the facade, is there masonry work going on?
There is stabilization, repair, staff level, typical scope of work that's happening, but it's being preserved as it is. So not trying to sanitize or reverse any of the existing conditions.
Great. So the white paint will remain.
Everything will remain. Yes.
That's fantastic. And then what's the preservation treatment for the existing signage? The painted signage on the 40.
Brendan, that's an interesting question. It's going to remain, but we haven't talked about how to treat it and whether it is preserved as it is and protected in some way, or if we endeavor to restore it either more fully or partially. And we'd be very open to hearing your thoughts on that, and certainly working with the Landmarks Commission in trying to resolve how to best represent that and maintain that identity.
There is the one looks like the exposed granite header.
Here.
That was the word the.
I'm going to see the detail. Let's see. That's probably the best where you see it right there. That.
It's a difficult question.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's it's the fundamentals of preservation, right? Like understanding, like whether you keep it as it is, which is really just sort of tells the story of the place, or pronounce it.
Yeah. Don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't know that there's a right answer, to be honest. Either approach could be reasonable and a sound preservation approach. And I think the important thing is that we do it right, regardless of, whether it's restored and more legible, or if it's just preserved as an artifact and stabilized as it is.
Right, so we have the Sistine Chapel conundrum.
Exactly.
It did seem like you were outlining. One of the images had an outline, white outline of the.
It
letter.
did, it like,
Very
it
interesting.
changed a few times, let's see. It changed a few times over its history. And there was a time when it had a very small, well, first it started out with just the numbers, early in the 20s, it just had the numbers over the entry. Then it had the small the. And then maybe this, and that's still the like diminished the, and Cherry Lane is very pronounced. But there is one, I'm not sure where it is, but it was red
the
letters with
rendering, I think.
white highlight.
Yeah, that was a rendering that y'all made, right? It seemed like
Yeah, I'm not sure that
possible treatment.
no, that one is
Yeah,
just
magical.
showing the red.
Okay. And then moving next is the entrance way with the I just want to confirm that glazing is slumped, curved. And then I guess my question is that critical to the design vision? Certainly it does pronounce that it's not part of the historical building, which is good. I'm just throwing it out there. Again, I don't have an answer to that.
You're asking about the glazing itself or the whole wall? Yeah,
Oh, the wall, I'm actually talking about the glazing itself.
Yeah.
It is slumped and curved, right?
Yeah.
That is right. That is correct.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that
Right.
up.
We looked at it as segmented, and it just felt like it was like a third
Faceted.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
faceted.
Yeah.
And it just felt the curved form really kind of signaled this new box office piece as a piece separate from the existing fabric.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Mary Beal from Cherry Lane Theater has joined us. So Mary, please go ahead.
Hi all, nice to be here. My Zoom froze, apologies. I'm here for any questions about the theater. I believe there was a question about the studio theater being active.
To the public,
Yes.
I think was the question.
Yeah.
Yes, from about 1996 to 2022, it was an active studio theater.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Chanel, there are a couple of members of the public who would like to speak.
Okay, I'll just go through one by one, please.
Sure. So Jeffrey Rowland is first and Pete Davies will be next. Pete, I will be elevating or allowing you to rejoin as a panelist if you wish. Jeffrey, you can speak as last time. Thank you. And Jeffrey, you're first.
Okay, thank you. I will listen to this very proposal in front of the SLA a while ago. I don't see many changes that are significant. I thought it was excellent then. I think it's excellent now, and I think historically appropriate. I might add that I think that you'll find looking around in the village that almost all historical residential entrances actually open in. The commercial ones open out. I don't think it's a requirement that the residential ones open out, or otherwise my building and every building I know on the block would be in violation. I think that the signage, the Cherry Lane sign that's faded, I'm in favor of restoration to the condition that was the current condition. In other words, not some previous signage with little but the current one just restored to its condition, so that it will in fact be able to endure over a long period of time. I think it left in the condition it is now, it likely would fade away to the point that it would, one point, nobody would care that it was there. And so I'm inclined to say restore. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. And Eugenia, Pete Davies is next, yes?
Yes, you're right, Susan. So thank you,
Thank you.
Jeffrey. And Pete, you are there. I see you on the screen.
Very good. Thank you very much. Could you put up slide 16?
This one?
It's
Or
different than what we
It's
got.
different. I'm so sorry. What was it,
It's the
Pete?
one where side by side you see the a photo of the poster with the
Oh,
red
yes.
door, red arch door to the left.
There you go. This
And
one.
on the right, you see the rendering.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, so I'm confused because on the left, that photo shows the width of the 4042 portion of the building that's behind the sign to be 1 brick wide.
Mhm.
But the rendering shows that portion of that same building to be 2.5 bricks wide. And all of your renderings show that extra width, whereas the photo and Google Street View show 1 brick width. So with what you show now on the rendering is that the division of the buildings kind of meets middle-ish of the poster, but when you lessen the width of that poster box, it's going to fit, it's going to sit differently. I'm just confused as to why your rendering doesn't comport with what the actual situation is with the facade.
Yeah, I think and Morgan can opine on this, but I think there is just a discrepancy in the rendering. The sign itself is narrower and it is less tall. So it would free up masonry area around the sign. But I think that you're right, that when we take it in by, I think the difference is something like 8 inches or 6 inches, that it might end up right at the building line. And it was purely an oversight and not an intentional representation.
Okay, so that misrepresentation of the facade has no implications for any of your other measurements or work that you're doing?
No, it's just the
Just the render program.
just the rendering, yeah.
Okay, it is helpful when things are accurately presented to us, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. All right, Chenault, there don't appear to be any other questions from either committee or public or board members.
Okay, thank you very much. The community, in particular, those of us who have a professional interest in the theater, are very happy that it's been preserved as a theater, and essentially from the look point of view, it's not going to be changed at all. And there was a time when it seemed that it may not be able to continue as a theater, so it's very happy news about what's happened. Thank you.
Should I stop sharing now? Is that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
If you would rearrange people, please, Eugene.
Thank you. Yes, we'll rearrange the deck chairs. So
The next application is 829 Greenwich Street to alter the facade and construct a small rooftop addition and rooftop solar panel canopy.
yes, so I am promoting Jonathan Taylor for 829 Greenwich. If there is anyone else in the attendee list, please raise your hand for 829 Greenwich. Okay.
Yeah, this is Jonathan, and Alexandra Barker will also be one of the main speakers. So for sure, I want to make sure she gets promoted.
Yes, promoting 3 additional speakers.
Okay, good. That should cover everybody. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share. And so should I begin?
Please do, thank you.
Great. Hi, I'm Jonathan Taylor with Higgins, Quays, Barth and Partners Preservation Consultants. I'm joined by Alexandra Barker and Annie Paz of Barker Associates Architecture Office, as well as my colleague Erin Ruley, who you just heard from. We're here to present modifications to 829 Greenwich Street, which is a residence that was approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in 2003. The modifications are part of a project that was conceived to comprehensively address building performance issues inherent in the original curtain wall and steel plate facade design. The house is located between Horatio and Greenwich Streets, Gansevoort Streets, on the Greenwich Village District's northern border with the Gansevoort Market Historic District. These are a few street views of the building on Greenwich Street. The street facade is composed of a steel plate that is set asymmetrically forward of a curtain wall window system that runs up each side of the facade. At the ground floor are deeply recessed entry and garage door. And as you can see on the right, the south side elevation is partly visible with a red brick chimney and a large angled skylight. At the non-visible rear of the building, the rear facade is largely made up of a massive window wall. And there's also a small rear yard with skylights to the basement. Repair and replacement of the decking and skylights are being reviewed by LPC at staff level. Some views on the roof of the building with the existing large skylight and the existing chimney. There's also non-visible mechanical equipment that's going to be replaced. Alex Barker will discuss the proposal in detail, but I did want to show a few overview images of the project before briefly discussing the site history and context. The proposal entails on the front facade introducing new larger window openings that intersect with the steel plate and cladding the setback portions of the facade in brick. The entry infill is to be brought somewhat forward, but remain set back from the facade. And just a couple of other street views of the proposed rendering. At the rear, it's proposed to replace the window wall with a stucco-clad rear facade with punched openings that for windows that echo the design of the front facade. The angled skylight is to be replaced by an angled solar canopy. And at the southeast corner of the rear, at the rear of the south rear of the building, is proposed a small greenhouse, also with a sloped roof. And that will be visible only from a limited vantage points, which we'll show you later. And this is just another angle view onto the rear. So just some facts about the site. It was originally occupied by a mid-19th century townhouse that by the early 20th century had been highly altered for industrial purposes. You can see it on the tax photo on the left with very large openings. By the time of designation of the district, the house was described, the building was described as being completely stuccoed over at the front facade. In 2003, the LPC approved replacing the deteriorated shell of the former building with the existing residence. And this approval of this striking design was an example of the Commission's approval of proposals for new buildings in the district that reflect in contemporary design the variety of building types and materials in the district and the way that buildings have evolved over time over the long history of the district. And this history of evolution and a variety in building types, particularly in the Far West Village, also informs the proposed interventions. So just a couple of slides about this context. As I think we're all familiar with, historic examples of the way that the district's earliest buildings have visibly evolved over time include dramatic intervention in the facade of studio windows, like you see on the left, modification of stoops and entries that result in new arrangements of windows and doors. And at the right, we see the combination of two early row houses into an apartment building in the 1920s, where you can still legibly read the original houses, but you also they're now an apartment building, and there you see the two houses amid alterations such as the new arched windows that sit below the straight lintels at the ground floor. And then also over the course of the district's history, the succession of architectural styles, new building types such as tenements, and the comprehensive redesign of original houses with completely new facades and eclectic styles also contribute to the variety of the visual variety of the district. And additionally, in the Far West Village, the prevalence of industrial buildings, both purpose-built and adaptations of earlier buildings for industrial uses, further contributed to the visual variety, often with large and irregular window openings that suited the purposes of the individual buildings. And all of these contributors to the lively variety of the district have been considered and even celebrated by the Commission in approving new and significantly altered buildings. The examples here illustrate how layering in depth and varieties in opening sizes and shapes and references to textures and sculptural forms have been interpreted in Commission-approved contemporary design. And so with that background, I'll just turn it over to Alex to go into the details of the proposal for 829 Greenwich.
Great, thank you very much, Jonathan. So I'm going to start by walking you through the existing conditions of the property to give everyone some context that prompted many of the changes we are proposing to make to this building. The front facade systems were found to have suffered considerable deterioration in the 20 years since this building was constructed. The curtain walls had failed gaskets and many were inoperable, producing water and air leakage and exacerbated thermal bridging. The steel plate, as installed, had considerable thermal bridging as well as water leakage at material transitions. These water issues caused the house to develop a significant mold problem that had to eventually be professionally abated due to these issues. The glass curtain wall at the rear facade shows more of the same deterioration, water, air leakage, and thermal bridging problems. At the roof, the large skylight also had water leakage problems and produced excessive heat gains. At the parlor level roof terrace, extensive water leakage was detected through the roof and skylight. Returning to the front facade, we did an extensive review of the DOB requirements for the structure. We determined that the bedrooms at the front and the top two floors do not meet the minimum legal requirements for light. Habitable living spaces like bedrooms and living rooms require the area of an operable window to be at least 10% of the area of the room. In this case, the windows indicated here are required to be 12 square feet at the very minimum. One of these windows is 8.2 square feet, while the other is 7.4 square feet. These small openings are also recessed behind the plane of the steel plate facade, which restricts the amount of airflow. Although the size of the openings meets the minimum requirements for air, this inadequate airflow was likely to have exacerbated this mold problem that developed in the house. The recessed spaces at the entry door and garage doors are deep enough to be used as shelters by transient individuals, creating a safety hazard. So we'll now return to the design proposal. We're proposing changes to the front facade that seek to address some of the deficiencies we've outlined. We're proposing to eliminate facade systems that were at the end of their lifespan, with ones that greatly improve thermal performance, air and water tightness, and provide long-term durability. The deteriorated curtain wall glazing is replaced with a brick wall with punched openings. We're also proposing to create punched triple glazed window openings in the steel facade that will greatly increase natural ventilation and light to meet code requirements. Our design builds off the long history of alterations to existing structures in the Greenwich Village Historic District that Jonathan outlined, whereby new apertures with different proportions and rhythms can be seen layered onto the original facades. As we know, enlarged studio windows and windows of different shapes that reflect different architectural styles and time periods and evolving uses have been added to existing structures, and this layering of facade elements is part of the fabric of the neighborhood. Finally, our window design plays off of the floating nature of the steel plate. The existing steel plate does not align horizontally with other elements in the facade or with elements in neighboring buildings. It sits in its own plane. In our proposal, we build upon that idea by intentionally floating the new openings in the plate in a different plane and sliding them to create their own independent alignment. The intersection of the windows, the steel, and the brick facade build upon the existing facade's layered configuration. The replacement of the roof skylight and the addition of solar panels is in keeping with changing building department requirements to move the city away from a dependency on gas. The shift to electric fuel is part of an effort by the owners to follow the increased thermal performance characterized by a design approach called Passive House, where the building is designed with a tight thermal envelope that dramatically reduces heating and cooling loads. The angling of the greenhouse roof is configured in order to capture rainwater within the boundary of the property. Here we are identifying the materials we are proposing for the front facade. All materials aside from the steel plate need to be replaced due to deterioration. We chose to replace the curtain wall with brick that would echo the brick of the surrounding structures. We are using aluminum window frames rather than steel due to their superior thermal capabilities. We replaced the curtain wall at the rear with a stucco wall and punched openings to improve thermal capabilities as well. Here's the detail of the new window at the front facade. The material choices were made to improve thermal properties and eliminate potential for water penetration. The facade design incorporates passive house detailing, including increased insulation membranes, and triple glazed windows that minimize air and moisture leakage through the building envelope. Here you can see that the edge of the steel plate is still visible and in a different plane from the window. In these wall sections, you can see we are adding continuous insulation as well as a fire barrier behind the steel plate. These details of the facade shown in plan demonstrate the existing and proposed conditions. In the proposed, the added insulation now continues across the entire facade behind the steel plate, its aluminum capping, and the brick. In this detail, you can again see the new window located behind the plane of the steel plate and the new insulation.
Oops.
These sections show the existing and proposed relationships between the building envelope and the covered exterior space at the entrance level. In the proposed, we are moving the plane of the building at grade forward to minimize the covered space outside so that it does not create such a large sheltered area. We are still preserving the setback from the primary facade. The existing conditions of the roof are detailed here. These are the proposed configurations. We're replacing the large skylight with a bulkhead for the stair and a solar array that covers an exterior space. At the rear of the roof, we are proposing a small vertical extension that will serve as a greenhouse. Here, the changes to the roof level are shown in plan. The skylight is replaced with an exterior covered terrace. This plan of the top view of the roof level shows the proposed solar array replacing the skylight. Looking up at the roof from the street, you can see the level of visibility of the proposed changes. These photos are two views looking north from the intersection of Horatio and Greenwich Streets. This is a photo of the mock-up and also the proposed roof changes, also from the intersection of Horatio and Greenwich. Here's a second set of views further down Greenwich, showing the mock-up on the left and the proposed roof on the right. The proposed changes to the south facade include an additional lot line window. Here are the proposed changes to the building envelope shown in a section cut from front to back through the stair bulkhead. And this is one from side to side. You can see there's proposed excavation at the cellar level, and that's being reviewed at staff level. Here we are detailing the proposed changes that are following passive house standards. Generally speaking, passive house structures are designed with a tight building envelope with maximized insulation to reduce heating and cooling loads. They're detailed with continuous membranes that minimize air leakage, and the solar array generates energy. The building envelope becomes thicker to accommodate insulation and thermal membranes. All windows will have triple glazing for added thermal performance. Mechanical air circulation allows filtered air to move between inside and outside during times of the year when natural ventilation isn't desired. Gas surfaces removed and replaced with electrically powered equipment in accordance with Local Law 154. Secondary enclosure details. Here are the enclosure details for the rear facade showing the added insulation and building membranes. And these are the roof assembly details. And finally, there's more information about the project, including the appendix, which we can go through if there are questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. I'll just run back to overall views. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I don't think I have any questions. So Susan, can we begin with the?
Yeah, Brian Payne.
Thank you. Well, I was certainly impressed by the work that you've done. Very thorough. It seems like a total gut renovation. And I can see the amount of care that's been taken for all the details and especially the passive house aspects that will greatly benefit that owner. I would say that the one thing, actually I have 2 points or 2 questions. The first is just for curiosity, that's a very thick steel plate on the front facade, if I'm not mistaken. And so will that be welded for the new openings in place? I mean, cut in place, or is that going to be dismantled and then reapplied as a rain screen or something like that?
We're leaving it in place. It's 1.5 inches thick, and it just, I thought, we thought a lot about it. It was a very big undertaking to put it in place, and we thought it should remain in place. And we thought, in the spirit of the way that other buildings have been altered over time, that we would kind of just work on it from its existing location. So we're adding insulation behind it. We're cutting openings into it, but kind of keeping it in its current positioning. And other than the openings that we're adding, it would just remain there.
That makes a lot of sense. So my second point is that seeing how carefully that you have designed this home and really reflecting on much of the other work that I've seen of yours, I would imagine that you looked at several, maybe even dozens of different arrangements and compositions of the window openings on the front facade. And with that assumption, I must say that this particular arrangement of windows and the rounded corners strike me as very inappropriate, doesn't seem to be in place in the neighborhood, doesn't reflect anything that's in the neighborhood, despite the very large variety of window fenestrations that you showed, and I know that are existing. This does not exist anywhere that I know of. And I'm wondering if there might be a review of other arrangements and designs that you have come up with.
I mean, I think that's certainly possible. I would say that we, in particular, looking at 70 Horatio, which was one of the buildings that Jonathan showed earlier, that you can actually see from our site. And also, 70 Horatio, which is, sort of, basically it's kind of right at that intersection of Greenwich and Horatio. But where those pictures we were taking, where you're looking at the building, I was standing right in front of it. And then also the 727 Washington Street. I think that we were trying to kind of play off of some of these kind of more, I guess, sort of playful, I guess, and unusual, irregular shapes that have been approved in the past.
Is that it, Brian?
Well,
Exactly.
I just hope that we would see something else. So, thank you.
Valerie De La Rose.
Yeah, I think the windows in existence of themselves outside of the context of the historic district are elegant. But in the context of the historic district, compared to all of the examples you've shown, I see the windows here first when seeing the proposed facade. There's no doubt they're elegant and elegant treatment. And I can see from some of the examples that you've shown where it's just a bit more subtle, the rounded. There's one specific that really stood out to me that I could see where, I think it's on their page 13. I just have it zoomed in, where on 114 Waverly Place, I can see where there's a slight curvature, but it's not the actual, it's just a much more subtle treatment than what you proposed. It doesn't stand out on its own. It's kind of a detail you kind of discover upon looking closer to the building. Thank you. It was a great presentation.
Oh, Jonathan, did you have something to say?
Well, I think I would just, about 114 Waverly, I mean, I understand the point. I would also say, though, that, I mean, even within this facade, there's like a number of different sort of curvatures that come into play. And in fact, the window, maybe you can't see it that well because of the tree, but the window at the top is a very large sort of partly arched window. And so I think that is a relatively like sort of bold introduction of this kind of sinuous form. And I maybe also just to address sort of a broader statement about some of these kinds of comments is that, I think that maybe some people might have looked at the original building, or maybe still do, and think the original design of 829 as something that is sort of not exactly something that you see in the district, and yet it was kind of an interpretation of things and synthesis in a contemporary way of things that you do see in the district, obviously in a very new way. And so I think that I think what we're trying to present here is something in a similar spirit of sort of taking these themes from the village and making something that is kind of new out of them, but that does relate. So.
Thank you. Anissa Brand.
Yes, yes, thank you for this presentation. I mean, clearly, we get your building, this building, and all the presentations that want to do something a little out of the norm. So I can appreciate that it is different. I think the vocabulary of that half round, quarter round, whatever, I guess it's a quarter round, is that it's there is no context for it, and I know you said that's okay. So, but it's from the 60s. If the building had been designed and built in the 60s, I could go along with that. But this is only not even 20 years old. So, but I really wanted to talk about something else. So I agree with Brian and Valerie also. Is the visibility of the rooftop. And I guess I don't, all of a sudden, the image on the far right there's a big box. And I didn't really pick up on that when I looked at the other drawings. And on the left, is that supposed to be the sloped roof? It looks like a balcony or something. I'm not understanding that.
Yeah, that is the solar array, and under the underside of the solar array, it looks kind of overly shadowed, I think, but the underside of the solar array would just be wood. So it's kind of
a solar array? Maybe
like solar panels, right? So solar panels are on the top, but instead of using those typical solar panel structures that are kind of unsightly, we're making it more like one of those covered roof structures that you would put on the roof of the building. So the top has solar panels, but the underside is finished with wood.
And the box that we see.
That was the greenhouse.
Well, that I think is really unnecessarily big and obvious in your mock-up, rather. Maybe
we should look at the mock-up page, because I do kind of feel like there's a bit of, the sloped shape of the south side was pretty big. Now it was gray, of course, so maybe that's an issue, but we're bringing that down from the height that it was, and then we're kind of, I guess it's a bit of a trade-off, because we're lowering that area in the foreground, but then we have a little bit of a higher piece in the background.
Why do you need a greenhouse?
To be clear, it's in the left-hand picture, it's the mock-up that's breaking
orange
we're discussing. Is that correct?
Yeah. So obviously there's the existing skylight, which is going to be removed, is kind of in the way of making exact mock-up of the canopy. So the outline of
I'm talking about the new glass house in the back.
That's you see the box in the mock-up, and on the right that's rendered into what the materials would look like.
And I guess I'm questioning what you're calling a greenhouse, why that is so important that it really ruins your other decisions.
Right. This is a desire of the client, and that was, obviously if you make a greenhouse, you have to make it out of glass. It's
But
a
you
very,
do
very
have
small
other-
structure.
You do have, that is not the place to put it if it's so highly visible. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Albert Bennett.
Yes. The problem with that rooftop structure in your existing with proposed roof is that it's so very dark. And that is a greenhouse and it is all very dark.
That's not the greenhouse. Those are the solar panels.
Yeah, there's two pieces
But
here.
the panels are just the roof, right? There's a flat surface on the roof that are the solar panels.
Sloped.
They're not, the panels are not vertical. The panels are just horizontal. Am I correct?
Yeah, you don't, yeah, the panels are facing up on this canopy that you, so you don't see the panels here. But the framing, I see what you're, and this is just the posts and the framing of the greenhouse and the canopy. They are shown in a dark finish.
Very dark, yes.
And is that true of the ceiling of the constructor as well?
The ceiling is supposed to be wood, but obviously we could make it all a lighter material for sure.
It's very modern, obvious. Well, it is modern, the whole building.
It's a modern building. I mean, I'll just reiterate what Alex said. Is, you know, there is a highly visible kind of angled volume up presently. So I think the net a change in sort of visible volume up here is not really changing all that much. But
Right, the front part's going down, the back part's going up, but the materials are changing.
I think
And
we understand that.
Yeah,
So can we
okay.
move on to some other topic?
All right, is that it for you, Albert?
I would just like to comment on the, I agree with the other committee members on the facade and whether it is at all appropriate. It is within the Greenwich Village Historic District, correct?
yes, it is. And the building itself was approved by the commission in 2003.
It was approved. Okay, because it's right on the border. It's hard to tell.
It's on the
from
very
maps,
border.
but
Yeah, the next
Mhm.
building to the north is in the Gansevoort district,
That's in the Gansevoort Historic District.
which is
Okay, well,
also
thank you
another
so
building.
very much for paying so much attention to the ecological aspects. Replacing all the gas with electricity and particularly with the solar panels. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Albert. Brendan Fitzgerald.
I think Albert might have answered my question. I thought this was the Gansevoort, which is a different designation. So
Never mind.
that's what I was gonna mention, but it's irrelevant now. Thanks.
Donna Raftery. Hi, Donna.
Hi, thank you. Yes, it is in the Greenwich Village Historic District, but it does border on the Gansevoort Market District. And I think that when this was first done, part of the reasoning was to bring in some of that industrial feel. I will say you can see the greenhouse on the top. I live right around the corner from here. So, in terms of the rooftop, what's there now is visible from the street. So whatever they're putting there, you'll be able to see, but you can already see something. So the way they're describing it seems pretty accurate to me. I agree with other members of the committee that this facade does not work for me. I find it very busy and not representative of much around there. And I really would urge you to go back and reconsider this. It's just extremely busy. The curves, you're talking about 70 Horatio, that's one arched opening. somewhere. So I'd really like to see you go back and reconsider all these openings. It just seems extremely busy to me. That's it.
Thank you, Donna. That seems to be it at this end. I don't know if, so far there are no attendees with raised hands, but if there are any members of the public who wish to speak, please raise your hand now.
The owner of the townhouse. It's got it in the chat.
This is-
Well, that's right. He doesn't want to talk.
All right, no, there are no.
I'm hearing badly, Susan. There are no members of the public.
No, there are no other raised hands either from the community board or from the public.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I'll stop sharing now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to ask, occasionally we have questions in the business session that come up. There are some things that seem so complicated. I would appreciate at least one of you staying on. If something comes up, we'll ask you, we'll then bring you into that section of the meeting to answer the questions. It just seemed there's a lot of complexity in this one that might necessitate some clarification. So if you just stay on while we have the business session.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll call you if we need you, is it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we've promoted Mary for 661, 665 Broadway. Good evening, Mary.
Good evening.
Well, let me read it first, please. 661, 665 Broadway, 226, 230 Mercer Street. I beg you to just refer to Broadway and Mercer Street so we don't have to write so much. The application is to replace North 665 Broadway storefront and add the canopy, replace 225, 232, 228, 232 Mercer Street storefronts and add stairs at 228, 230 Mercer Street. I'm sure you'll make that all clear.
Good evening again. The first thing I'm asking is if you would please promote Mike Carlton, M. Carlton at, who's the architect?
Thank you, Mary. Yes, I'm promoting Mike Carlton.
And Mike will be the one who's sharing his screen when that time comes, which is probably about now.
There he is. He's popped up in the list.
Yeah.
Thank you. Did all be able to see my screen?
No.
Okay. There you go.
All right. Okay, Mike, we're seeing a black. There we go.
Good, we can see your presentation
Okay.
now.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Mary Diericks, the preservation consultant for the project, and presenting with me is Michael Carlton, who's the architect for the project. This is 665 Broadway and 240 Mercer in NoHo. It's two buildings and they run from Broadway to Mercer Street, which you can see here on the map. There's just starting, reminding you right at the beginning, there's a grade change from all of Broadway to Mercer, with Mercer being lower. And we're proposing steps, and many of the buildings have steps on Mercer leading to that higher first floor. And we're going to see examples later. Next. Here are the two buildings. They were joined internally a long time ago, sometime between 1921 and 1954. The one on the left was built in 1891 to 92, designed by Brunner and Tryon. And the larger building on the right was built in 1911 to 1912, not that much later, and designed by V. Hugo Kohler. So that on the left is the Broadway and the Broadway facades, and on the right are the Mercer Street facades. The scope is to replace the North 665 Broadway storefront in the bigger 1911 building, including restoring the canopy and adding signage, which we're not going into. On Mercer, both storefronts and all the doors will be replaced, and 2 sets of stairs will be added, and also new signage. The rest are public hearing items. Next. Here are the historic photos. On the top left, that's the older building in 1910. The newer building had not quite been built yet. The next one is in 1975, both buildings. And down on the bottom are the approximately 1940 tax photos showing the storefronts. On that left photo, you can just see there both photos. You can see there's a canopy over the storefront on the 1911 building. We're going to try and restore that, and we're going to try and not restore the storefront, but bring it back more to the way it looked in 1940, which was probably closer to the original, if not the original. Next, we're going to talk about Broadway, then we're going to talk about Mercer. So here are the Broadway buildings. Next. The storefronts are modern and have undergone a lot of alterations. Next. Mike Carlton is going to describe the conditions.
Okay, so this plan indicates the connection of Broadway to Mercer Street on the left. The Broadway or 665 Broadway is the larger building on the north, and the smaller building to the south, known as 228 Mercer in this case. The grade change very much guided a lot of the design approach here, and we just want to reinforce that by looking at this section through here. We can see the Broadway level is first floor level is in line with the sidewalk, but by the time you get to Mercer Street, there is a 30-inch difference between the sidewalk and the first floor level. In addition to that, this area of the Mercer Street, which is the north corner, is the electrical switchgear room for the building, which makes lowering the floor in this area an impossibility. Starting with the Broadway side of the building, the top elevation is the existing conditions of the facade that we're talking about. So it's this center section here that is proposed to be replaced, as well as this grill section here, neither of which are of any historical value. The central show window is much more in keeping with those 1940 tax photos, and as Mary pointed out, reintroducing the canopy that you see there in the photos as well. On the replacement of the transom, we would be looking to replace it with a simpler grille that picks up more of this verticality of the plaque that's above the transom window here. We do have requirements for ventilation that we need to deal with. We're not trying to recreate the grille to the left. We're simply providing a nod to its history. Just to put it all in a little bit more context, just a thumbnail sketch that I think better illustrates the three-dimensional qualities of some of this. So here again, we have the canopy, the show window below with the bulkhead similar in scale to what you see at the 1940s photo, and of course the doors on the right side with the new grille in sketch format. In terms of the finishes and details for the Broadway side. We have a section of the existing Broadway at the transom or the entry there. So this is the portion of the grille that would be replaced. We'd be keeping the existing doors that are there currently, pulling the grille back and putting a new decorative grille. And again, at staff level, we'd be talking about some retail signage, and you can see the profile of the canopy in the background there. To the right of the finished materials is the actual section through the show window, showing the mullion system, the bulkhead at the bottom, and the canopy again in section, which would have a continuous light feature to evenly wash the show window. The materials that we are looking to use here is to get away from all of the black that you see there now. The facade would be cleaned. Where necessary, it would be painted. General coloration goes back to the limestone of the building.
Breaking in, repainted. It's coated
Repainted.
with some sort of Prosoco, not Proso, it's some sort of thorough seal product.
And the bottom piers, the granite would be restored in that case.
Oh,
And I'll turn
okay,
it
so
back to Mary.
this is Mercer Street. It's a little bit
Excuse
different.
me, while we're
from-
still on Broadway,
Yeah.
could you go back to the lighting and say a little more about it?
Okay, well, this is a section of the construction of the canopy.
This Broadway, though.
On the Broadway side, so integrated to the underside of that canopy would be the new lighting that we're talking about. Where
Which
you
is-
can see my
which is
cursor
what?
there. That would be an LED linear light fixture. So it would run the length through here.
Okay, thank you.
This section of Mercer Street is a little different from the rest, in that the Mercer Playground and then Washington Square Village are on the right or west side. And then on the left, there's the older buildings south of our buildings, but on the north is a modern building that also breaks up the streetscape. Next. These are the two buildings on this side, the 1911 and the 1891 next to it. Next. And here are the storefronts. They both have modern infill. They're cast iron columns at 228. That's the older building, and they're going to be retained. Mike, next.
Okay, so again, here we have the existing versus proposed elevations along the Mercer Street side. And as stated earlier, Mercer Street is about 30 inches lower than Broadway with limited ADA compliant access. Central to the proposed improvements is the improvement of ADA compliant accessibility to the building as a whole, as well as the retail spaces to the north and the south. The main entrance at 230 Mercer Street, which is this existing central area here, that floor level will be lowered to sidewalk level. And that will include everything inside the lobby through to the elevator thresholds. The retail space at 232 Mercer will receive a dedicated entry vestibule. Actually, that is right here. Just beyond that vestibule would be a lift that is for the retail space itself. Similarly, on the 228 Mercer building, as stated earlier, we are introducing steps to overcome the height difference, but we're providing a vestibule with protected access to a lift, again, dedicated for only that retail space. And again, just a thumbnail sketch to illustrate what that starts to look like in terms of the streetscape. The stoop cast iron at the 232 Mercer Street side, that projects from the building line 36 inches. at the 228 building, because of the setback nature of the cast iron columns, we're looking at that being a 30-inch projection from the face of the building.
And the
just
marquee.
In the marquee. And so the new entrance is topped with a new marquee canopy. Again, nothing of that marquee comes in contact with the surrounding brick. It's all designed so that it is supported from between the piers that we're looking at there. So again, starting with the main entrance to the building, the office building portion of that. This is an existing section showing the step up from the sidewalk level, where beyond that there is a ramp. There's a vault structure here that would all be modified as shown in section number 2, where that comes down to the sidewalk level. We retain this existing decorative lintel that you'll see that was in the photograph, and everything happens below that, basically taking out only the storefront. The materials at the Mercer Street side of this building are meant to unite the Broadway side with the Mercer Street side. So again, we have the presence of restoring the granite at the bases here of the piers. On this side of the building, the main facade is this painted brick, but it works well with this medium bronze color that would be all of the new metal finishes throughout. In this particular case, and we'll get to it in the next page, because of the tightness with the stoop to the electrical room, we're looking at having closed risers with lighting integrated into the nosings, and then just some idea of the level that we'd like to see the project go to in terms of some historic decoration on the windows. So these are the existing conditions and proposed work for the retail space to the north. So again, this is a section that indicates the relationship of the sidewalk, the first floor, and that main electrical switchgear room below. So starting at the north side of the store, we're looking at the new cast iron steps, which lead to a 5-foot deep landing. And then that is into the store. We have a roof, and we maintain the mechanical grills at the or close to the property line level. And then we're showing the 3-foot setback or encroachment onto the sidewalk from there. Further south from that point, the details just really keep aligning, and we're showing here the show window aligning horizontal mullions similar to what we see on the Broadway side. A new aluminum frame metal panel, again finished to match the storefront system as a replacement for non-historic polished granite panels that currently exist in the space. And then further south within that small area, how that portion, now that it's not over the main electrical switchgear room, would be able to be modified where the floor would be lowered enough to the sidewalk to accommodate an ADA lift. Again, that would then enable the patrons to move up to the first floor in a similar fashion. On the smaller building, the 228 building, we have a little bit more latitude in terms of the design. And while it is one building today, it very much, obviously was a separate building when it was built. So we're looking at introducing some different details with this project. So again, the existing glass infill would be removed, and as this is the location of, again, these polished granite panels, that would come down to the first floor level. And starting with the center section of that, we would have the setback landing at the top of a cast iron stoop In this case, we have enough room where we'd be able to integrate the embedded prismatic glass at the risers. Above that, we are reintroducing 6x6 prismatic glass panels similar to what you see here in a zinc frame, and also similar to this to accommodate our ventilation grills in the middle. We would continue that zinc grill as a decorative element in front of the ventilation grills. And then finally, the 228 building would also have accessibility integrated with it in form of a protected vestibule with doors at sidewalk level, modification to the first floor level to allow for that lift, and then into the building. In terms of finishes, we are proposing to maintain the existing color of the cast iron and simply clean it. The storefront material and the other various metal pieces would be painted a slate gray finish, and again be similar in quality to what you see here in this photo. And just in terms of signage, again, something that would be dealt with at staff level at Landmarks. Suffice to say, all of the signage would be in accordance with Landmarks requirements.
Okay, back to me. I do want to say that we have no historical evidence that prismatic glass existed in the transoms, but we think that it is something that could have happened in a 1891 building, and you can see that in Lady Smile, although really there's not that much in NoHo that kind of relates to that. And we don't have historical evidence because people didn't take photos of Mercer Street. These stairs on Mercer are all the way up and down Mercer from NoHo down to Soho, because of the geography. We have examples that go almost up to 1900, 1896, 97, 1894. They're everywhere on Mercer Street, on the east side of the street. Next. And here are still more examples, starting from the 1850s, which you'd see in Soho, but also going all the way up to nearly 1900. We think this is typical of Mercer, and while they were not on our two buildings, that they are something that are typical of the streetscape. And one of the ideas of this project is to enliven that area, the streetscape. The two buildings are a little bit bland now on the ground floor, and we're looking to relate them more to the historic buildings to the south, and make them more a part of the the surviving historic Mercer Street. Next. And that's our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a couple questions. The lift, are they on only one or two places?
Those are in two places.
Okay, could you show the picture of the first one? I'm not clear where it stores in it.
Okay, so if you're
looking just show on this sketch.
Yeah, on this sketch. So on the right-hand side, this is the Mercer Street sketch. So where my cursor is right here, that is the entrance vestibule for the lift for this retail space here. And on the right, these doors are the entry vestibule to the lift for this retail tenant.
My question is, where does the lift store?
The lift is inside. It's a vestibule room. So these rooms will vary slightly in dimension, but they are roughly 8 by 8, 8 by 10 rooms. So enough room that allows for the opening of the door, turning of a wheelchair, access to the lift, and so on.
Oh, very nice. So that there's nothing on the street when they're not used.
Exactly. After we spent a good deal of time looking at Mercer Street and trying to avoid some of the issues that we see with lifts directly on the street.
And other thing, oh, this is it. The prismatic glass is the stairs on the extreme right of the drawing and the 3 bays above the transoms.
The stairs, yes. This bay, the 2 bays flanking the stairs would be the prismatic glass. This bay in the middle would be the same grille structure as the zinc caming of the prismatic glass, but it would have a ventilation grille behind it.
Okay, fine. And the other question is the bulkheads along this facade.
Mhm.
What are they? What are they in? What material?
These are matching metal panel framed, as you can see here, to the facade material itself.
And the other
And on both sides, here
Okay.
as well as on this
so
side.
they're metal. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Susan.
All right, does anybody in this room? Yes, Anita, Brent.
Yes, thank you. I think it was very good presentation and good thinking as far as the preservation aspects. I support the stairs going up. They're completely typical on the Mercer Street side. My question is about the illumination of the stair and why we would want to illuminate the nosing. Usually the basements are not lit and the cat eyes don't illuminate up, and it would be very flashy, I guess is what I'm thinking, but.
True. I mean, we're using, obviously lighting technology today that's relatively new in the whole process. And, to me, the lighting and the nosing in this building to the north here adds a level of safety to the space. And it also adds a certain level of interest for those months, where it's simply darker. Similarly, with the risers of the smaller building to the south, they add a element of interest at times when it's dark or dim. The interesting thing about this project is that on this block, north and south, the facade is devoid of really any life because of the period of time that those apartment buildings were developed. So we're looking to, as Mary said, enliven this little portion of Mercer Street that we can.
And one more, I'm sorry, just another question. Could you just talk about the canopy? I see it historic, so you're trying to recreate the canopy as it was in the photographs?
That's correct. We're, to the extent that we see it in those 1940s photographs, it is metal. We're not quite sure what its exact purpose was. We can only surmise what that is and look to repurpose it. But we do think that the canopy, it was obviously removed from the photos. It's something that's missing from the building, and it's something that really tends to ground that center section of that show window to be, a more, frankly, an inviting retail space. Particularly when we consider it as walking down Bond Street. This building is centered on Bond Street as you come down towards Broadway. So we think that anything that reinforces that symmetry would be beneficial to it.
Thank you. Brendan Fitzgerald, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. The introduction of the prismatic glass in the transoms is very interesting. And I wanted to ask a question about if you were able to find a profile that actually worked in the prismatically, in the sense that this technology was amazing because the light could bounce and really hit far. So I'm just wondering if there's anything around that you were able to find.
You know, I've spent so much time looking for actual prismatic glass. There's variations of it made, a lot like Fresnel glass and that type of thing, but because the technology simply isn't needed anymore, nobody's making real prismatic glass that I can find other than, you know, what you can buy from salvage companies.
Yeah.
You know, so we know that that's a challenge to get that in this situation. And even as the photographic example, I was heartened to see that at least there is a modern reference to prismatic glass, albeit that's not real prismatic glass.
I appreciate it. Yeah, especially now that we're trying to moving into a more of a low carbon environment, to bring this back would save so much money, so much carbon. Anyways, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, there are no other questions among the committee or the board. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Eugene and Chenault, there are no raised hands.
So everyone who wishes to speak about any application is spoken. Is that correct?
So it would seem.
It would appear so.
Okay.
Watching carefully to see if there's any last.
Thank you very much. We'll move on.
Thank you.
That's it, Mike.
Wait, there was a hand. Pete Davies raised his hand.
Hand.
Pete, I am promoting you to panelist, so you can rejoin the meeting. Okay. I will permit you to speak.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that our building at 546, 548 Broadway in the transom has the, I believe it's prismatic glass across the entire storefront. I will put a link to Google Street View in the chat. That was discovered when the facade was redone about 20 years ago. They stripped off the old and found above the store windows the little glass pieces. I'm not sure if it's actually prismatic, but if you look there on that link, you'll see it all across the front there. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. That's great.
Okay, Susan, is that it?
That is it.
Okay, can we take a small moment before we go on?
Sure, how many moments? Take a little break. Take 5 here.
Very simple people on Zoom. I don't think we need a break. But I like the very simple people on Zoom. I don't think we need a break. Well, maybe. Did you say?
I've renewed my hydration when people are back. Susan, can you faded a bit in and out. Is there a microphone you can put a little more toward you?
There we go. How's that?
Ever so much better.
Okay, come here, buddy. I'll be here.
Is there only one microphone?
Two.
There are two.
Because Anita was fine
There's one right here.
and Valerie was questionable sometimes.
Oh,
Nothing personal.
We're waiting for Brian to get back, yeah.
Yes.
I suggest we start with Greenwich Street since I asked him to stay in case we have questions.
Sure.
Can I say something about Greenwich, so it's not about the application specifically? I think it tells us that how important this.
Look at the microphone more. We know
Oh,
what you look like.
I find it so fascinating that this building that's only maybe 20 years old has completely deteriorated because of insulation problems, water problems, who knows what, design problems. And meanwhile, our 1830s, 1840s buildings, they're brick, they're wood, they're single pane glass, standing strong. So there's a moral to that story.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
Amen.
Yeah. All right, Chanel, Brian is back with
Okay.
us.
Okay, if we could start, Brian, we'll start with the Greenwich Street application.
I would like to say something just for starters on Greenwich Street, and that I think this is a pretty, to me, this is a clear example of, frankly, the limits of eclecticism as a rationale for certain types of aesthetic choices within historic districts. So I would just like to introduce that as kind of a theme, so that we can kind of get going on what I think many of us felt were some problems with the design of the front facade.
Yes. Specifically, is there anything other than the windows within the windows? Is there anything else to the front facade?
Well, I don't know if anybody objects to that box, the greenhouse box. I don't know.
The front facade.
Oh, front facade.
And let's talk about the front facade.
Okay, the
first.
windows then.
I didn't hear you.
Susan's given a theme for the windows.
Well, yes, so as I mentioned, from the work that Ms. Baker does in her firm, I think they must have tried many different variations. And I just think that they could review what they have considered in light of our comments and choose something else that they think is appropriate. But I do not find those quarter round windows to be at all appropriate under any kind of context.
It was sort of like rationale to find the reason for the windows that are there. Valerie?
Yeah, I mean, 20 years ago, we said that we would have liked to have seen a facade treatment that reflected stronger references to the historic elements and materials in the district. We also recognized 20 years ago that it was a unique site, but I agree with what Brian said.
And indeed, as with it's a different thing totally, but it's more stark. But with Bleecker Street, as things like this come along, we want to improve rather than amplify what we might see as a misjudgment in prior time. Do we say anything specifically about the windows and their design?
Brendan?
I found them dizzyingly random. And there's nothing that I can think of historically or industrially or anything that would relate to the randomness of it.
Yeah, agreed. Brendan. You're muted.
Bad boy. I think randomness is a good way to describe it. I try to stay objective about design interventions. Because it is on Greenwich, in the Greenwich Village Historic District and with the federal building next to it, I agree that the curve, kind of the radius windows presents a challenge. And further, the images that depict what Landmarks has approved in the past, it's really hard to say anything about those without seeing what was there previously. So yes, there are buildings that have curved windows. But what does that mean? Are we in danger, like Chanel said, Bleecker Street style, where it's just design creep and then it's too late for us to do anything about it if we have an objection. So that's my point. Thank you.
Anita?
Yeah, the building is already so different, unusual, sort of eye-catching, whether you like the architecture or not. And that the windows don't have to be. It's like the first thing your eye goes to is those quarter rounds, and I think it looks very 1960s. And if the building were from the 60s, you could sort of sell it. But to put that in now without any context, and we don't have windows like that. They just look weird. They're weird windows. We don't like weird. The building is weird enough. It doesn't need more weirdness.
I've passed it for years and I kept saying, who on earth thought to do that?
Yeah.
Well,
And this at least
a
keeps
very
it looking from like a prison or something.
closed view of the world is very, it says a lot, actually, that steel plate. But
And our objection is that they don't build on anything or reference anything at all.
no, and they're
They're
making it
arbitrary.
weird still. We don't need, we're in preservation. We have to find some guidelines in the neighborhood. The operation, the size, there's so many different kinds of windows. Some are awning, some are casement, some are fixed. It's a lot for a little strip of metal. So.
Okay, I think that's clear. I heard no comment on the rear wall or the modest lot line additions.
It's fine.
I don't think that was objectionable to anybody.
We're okay.
Okay.
I just want to add one more comment about the overall project, which is I think we should applaud them for doing going for a passive energy type of building, making it airtight. That's a very difficult thing to do, especially in an existing building. So that's pretty great.
Valerie?
Yeah, is that something that we want to add in the whereas to acknowledge that?
I think
It definitely should acknowledge that, whereas, and applaud their exclusive commitment. Right, our commitment to that, I think, should definitely be
Sure, yep.
Supported.
Okay.
And I think we need to make
Okay, the rear windows somewhat reflect the front, though they're actually a little less peculiar.
Yeah,
I thought they were punched though.
they were punched openings in the rear.
Yeah.
What more could we add?
Yeah, that was much subtler.
Yeah, no one brought up anything before about them. It's so we'll let it remain as approved. Is that correct?
For the rear, yes.
Yep, okay. The roof, in two parts, the canopy and the greenhouse. First, the canopy.
Okay, well, I would say that when I went by there to look at the mock-up, the canopy structure does reduce the overall profile of that wall. And I think that we were all kind of fooled by the dark color. It looked solid. It looked like a solid box enclosed. And so to learn that it was actually going to be an open, like a
Almost like a pergola.
Gazebo, something like that, with a wooden ceiling. I would encourage it to be a lighter wood. And that makes a big difference to me. Now, as far as the framing, that might be lightened up too, to kind of blend a little bit more with the sidewall, with some of the brick colors or something to make it not stand out quite as much. But again, we're talking about a major effort and expense to provide some renewable energy sources to this building. And the whole city of Yes is wanting to move in that direction. They're going to be loosening up the restrictions for solar panels on roofs. And so I see this as going in the right direction. And finally, the little greenhouse box, it probably could be helped by doing a little bit different coloration or different size of the framing or something like that, so it's a little lighter. So with those comments, I find it very acceptable.
You wouldn't ask to have the greenhouse moved someplace else?
No, that would not be one of my comments.
Okay. Others? Remote people?
I think that's it, Chanel.
The about the canopy, it looks like a temporary something for a wedding, except black. If it just had a little more architecturalness about it. It seems like it's bending over backwards to be minimal. In addition to, certainly it wants to be light.
Yeah, and these renderings are difficult sometimes. They're not as subtle as the real thing. So giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Maybe the drawings, but if the poles were more substantial, maybe. So it looked permanent.
Understood, ribbing or something, yeah. Okay.
It does substantial say it right without saying what to do.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think we've made our point.
And lighter throughout.
Yeah, finesse it.
I thought the panels were going to be glass like I'm accustomed to seeing, but black seems to be the new stylish ones. Okay.
Sounds good.
And the greenhouse, lighter.
Lighter, maybe
Meaning
it has to
not
be a
black.
square, I don't know. It's like really, I guess because we're looking for it, but it really looks like a very big black box to me, so. Anything to finesse it a little bit.
Too assertive and box-like. I can't say Anita doesn't know. That's not something I can write down.
Even if it were sloped ceiling there, I mean, that's probably would help a lot.
If it was
I think the rendering had a lot to do with that.
yeah. It's still a rectilinear thing plopped on top of the house.
Exactly. I mean, why not slope the ceiling? Again, it's just a little trickery, but we like that when we need it.
I guess maybe we could say something like less assertive greenhouse.
I am a greenhouse. I'm entitled to be a greenhouse. Well, we'll figure out what, but I think we made our point.
It doesn't grow out of anything.
Yeah.
Taken out of the store and plopped on the roof.
Wonder if
That's what it
tinted- I wonder if tinted glass would help for anybody.
No, I don't love so. Like,
creativity will come to pass here. Is there anything else on this application?
we are done.
And to the applicants, thank you for staying. Our memories were quite good, apparently. If we go back to Fifth Avenue, where are you?
We on Fifth Avenue now? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Fifth Avenue?
Yes.
Okay. Go out, Valerie.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we include in the whereas that it's removing 2 trees.
This what?
That there will be, that it's gonna have removed 2 trees, just so it's in the record.
Well, it's the main objection I have. The application is fine. I don't have a problem with the radiant heat. It's, it has to do with ice. It's not the snow. So,
The trees are
No.
aesthetic.
I don't have a problem with the sidewalk thing, but the trees is a shame, and it's really whether it's the DOT or whether it's just not working with their design, but I would like to see the trees put back, maybe in a new location.
Right, I didn't quite understand why they need to be taken up for something.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand that either. I think that,
We want the trees preserved in addition to this.
right.
Well, it definitely. but there
What we
are-
need to do is to send a separate because this is, we'll put it in this. We suggest that we also send a separate letter to Landmarks specifically saying this, because the thing has long been to us.
The problem is the Department of Buildings, not Landmarks, DOB.
This is the DOT though.
Right.
They govern this, and the forestry department or something like
This is
that.
DOT because it's a sidewalk.
I know, but trees have their own agency.
That's right.
I think we should agree to have it relocated if they wanted to, because I don't, it looks like the tree is right in the same location as their canopy. Like, it's right next to where the canopy is, so anyway, I'll go along with either way, but I wouldn't mind if they just relocate the 2 trees. And look, they'll take good care of them afterwards.
I
so.
just didn't buy the fact that in all that expanse, light pole or fire hydrant or whatever, there can't be 2 trees.
Exactly. They're just not working in that location. That is very clear to me. I mean, this is a big symmetrical building. It's a tower, has a canopy, everything is extremely organized, and the trees are disorganized. So we have to.
How on earth would anybody not want a tree?
What?
I'm distraught because my gas line and water line come in exactly splitting the lot into thirds, so there's not any place big enough for a pit without relocating them.
I say we want the trees, and if they can't work with them where they are, that they be relocated.
Right.
That would be my.
That pretty much covers.
And it's also, I've never seen one for this little slit. It's always been for the whole property.
What?
The sidewalk heating. It's always been for all the sidewalk, whatever it is. The 2 we've had were at the corner of Christopher Street and Waverly Place, the huge mega mansion that used to be the church school. and the building at the corner of 11th Street and
Harry,
4th Street.
the Perry one?
That was 2 houses, then they added a 3rd one. That entire facade.
Oh, so would you
House
prefer
plus its garden on one side
be
and
heated?
3 houses has the heating.
No.
It's
big
really wonderful when you walk along there in this wintertime, I must say.
And a lot of homeless people living there, I guess.
Okay, moving on to Commerce Street.
Oh,
In
Cherry.
the end, what I have is the lighting fixtures of a more historic nature.
Yes, that was, I mean, it's, you know, given the larger scope of what they're doing, I would say that the thing that I thought most of it was very good, but the lighting fixtures seemed incongruent with both the existing architecture and with what they themselves are doing.
Yeah, I didn't like the style of them at all.
No.
No historic.
They're just the wrong fixtures for the place.
Yeah.
But could I ask two
The other thing that
questions?
was discussed, and I think it was resolved, was the overhead sign.
Chanel, could I ask two
About having that
questions?
the grade is behind it and it's basically going to be the way it was. Is that-
Chanel, hang on one sec, because Albert would like to say something here
Oh.
for.
Yes. There are two questions I want to ask. I guess one is for Eugene, and that is there anybody, was there anybody here from Village Preservation, from the GVSHP?
She was not able to come.
There is no statement from the.
And I
village,
asked them to send a statement if they had one.
And they did not.
No.
Second question. Chanel, can I recuse myself from voting on this project?
Sure.
I know that
Later reason.
I know that there was a rumor recently that it was going to be destroyed, but after 68 years of living with it right behind it, and having attended performances in both those spaces so very many times, I believe that the committee will approve of it all, and the only thing I can approve is the sidewalk, the bluestone repairs.
Okay, we can't split the resolution, so. We can't split the resolution. We understand your.
Proposal is for.
You can recuse just in.
Abstain.
Abstain.
I think it's an abstention, Albert.
Oh, can I abstain then?
Yes.
Yeah, if that's better.
Can Albert still make comments even though he abstains? I'd really be interested in his opinions.
Yeah, sure.
Would you mind?
Yes, that's different from a recusal.
Well, I just said it. The only thing I can approve is repairing the bluestone. I know it's about usage, but the possibility of losing two performance, well, changing the signage and the entrance and everything else for one performance space and losing the other one entirely to a restaurant. We don't need another restaurant. And we do need space for rehearsals and a black box for performances. That's it. Why not leave it as it is? To me, it looks like, hey, we got a new owner, so we got to change it. That's it.
Oh, they want to make money, money.
Well, Albert, I think you can make that. I think you can vote no on that. I think that Landmarks is addressing social issues now. They certainly did with the 277 Canal hearing. So I think, and I'd leave this up to Chanel, is that might be a legitimate reason to deny because it is cultural and it is social. So I'm just going off of what
I think
Landmark
it's
said.
appropriate to put a whereas, about being sorry that it's gone, but, since we're dealing with a landmark decision, it can't be something that enters in to the, decision about whether to approve it or not.
Right.
Valerie?
I would just say, I think there should be a whereas. It just states that whereas the studio theater will
Right.
be replaced, just so it's a statement of fact. In there.
Are there any other comments on it? I think we resolved the, whatever it was about the sign and so forth.
I think we need to talk about the sign a bit more because I don't think that was resolved. Because I think there's two different ways to think about that sign, and we have an opportunity, should we wish, to weigh in on where we fall on this. The options being restore it in its current condition or recommend restoring it to some former, maintain
You're
it.
talking about the sign beside the box office.
Wait, what?
Which sign are you talking about, Susan?
The sign over
The which one?
The painted?
the
Susan,
painted,
which one are you talking about?
the painted sign.
Are you talking about where the deep entrance is?
Oh, okay.
There's the cornice, if you will, the lintel of the opening, which has some signage.
That's the one I'm talking about.
There's the
The
drop.
one over the entrance.
The one over the entrance.
Okay.
Yeah, 42.
There's
I
two.
thought that was resolved. Is there something more to say about it?
Only if we want to have an opinion.
I'm just asking.
It's not temporary. It's where it was originally, and it's staying. It looks like the box to the roll down gate, but
But that will change, I guess, according to what shows there, right?
yeah, they didn't show that. Yeah, I guess so.
So what I'm talking about is the one that's above the entry.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it.
salvaging the old
Yes.
the sign. I got you. All right.
That we have an opportunity to opine on whether we think it is more sensible to maintain that deteriorated sign in its current condition. So freeze it in time at that moment, at the moment that it is now, but maintain it so that it doesn't deteriorate further. Or restore it to a previous time.
Or let it go.
If I may add to that, I think it's a missed opportunity. Number one, to get rid of that false facade sign that's below, inside of the opening. Kind of looks like a roll down screen box. That to me, it looks out of place and I don't like the looks of it at all. So it'd be great if that could be eliminated and the roll down screen box is actually recessed up in the seat, up in the, above it or behind the facade. Secondly, well, restoring, I noticed in the historic photographs that lintel above that large opening had actually much more beef to it. It had some scrolling or some ledging at the top of it, similar to the smaller lintels. And so it's kind of a missed opportunity not to restore the historic lintel above that large opening.
Mhm.
I ditto that.
I would support that for sure. I just think we should not waste our opportunity to opine here. And I personally would absolutely support what Brian just suggested. I don't know, and Anita feels the same way. I don't know what others think about.
And removing the one that's dropped down.
Yeah.
But I'm glad.
I'm in support.
I want to be sure I understand. Brian, are you saying, without a picture, it's hard. Are you saying that the lintel you're describing is over the one over the main entrance?
Yes,
Okay, now the sign there is a banner sign. She said as much. And then they showed the frame that the banner sign attached to. Is that the sign that everybody's talking about?
that would be a sign that would be a missed opportunity to get rid of.
Right, okay, that one question then arises is if that's eliminated and there's no space in the ceiling to recess the box, would it be an architectural lintel that would mask the gate box?
No, because they already show the roll down gate box being recessed behind the masonry.
Okay, so that's not an issue. Okay, thank you. Valerie?
Thank you. I would just like to make a general comment. I know that we're approaching our third hour here, and I thank everyone for having their camera on that does, but for the people who have their camera off that are on the committee, it is a privilege to be joining this meeting virtually. So I would ask for the two people who have their camera off to turn it on.
Okay, I understand now about the overhead sign that being settled. Is there any other item about this?
And that's Bo and Andy that don't have their cameras on. Thanks.
I would encourage the committee to, with the painted lettering, to conserve it as is, not just to let it deteriorate, but to investigate conserving it.
Conserve which?
The lettering, the Cherry Lane Theater lettering in red, the hand painted lettering, that signage.
On the stone lintel.
Yeah, on the granite. Mhm. I would also encourage the not to repaint the granite, the little exposed area on the left. That's my opinion. I think it's very interesting the way it is, and if there is going to be anything restorative, it should be extremely minimal.
Okay, any other comments?
What about the curved glass and that curved kind of intervention into the vestibule? That's a big
all that's outside is the vestibule itself.
Oh, so we can't comment on
the bar.
What's that?
The bar is inside.
Right, but you've got a tiled curved wall on your left as you enter. And it has a slumped, curved, large glass window.
I think it's very nice, actually, I have to say. Even also because it's clearly not part of the historic facade. So it's sort of, I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. I thought that the tile itself was enough to offset, but from the historical, but cool. I respect that.
It seemed carefully done, just sort of fit in. Is that it for this application?
Yes.
I think so, yes.
Broadway. Mercer Street.
Yeah, no, I think that was
The
well
myriad
done.
details are, and I didn't hear any objections.
No objection.
Broadway facade or what, anything?
Anita, you mentioned you had an issue with the illumination of the stoop.
Yeah, I think that's a bad precedent. All of a sudden, we're gonna have like these really flashy stairs going down the street. There's plenty of light. I live there. I walk by that thing 10 times a day. And trust me, you can read a book at night.
Yeah, we have those all over down here too for the restored Grand Street. We have them on Broome Street. We even have the sidewalks illuminated. I find them to be okay. My real worry is that at some point they're going to be flashing and green and red.
Well, to me, it's really not historic. I mean, I know there's new technology and lighting, but I don't know.
Should we say modest and utilitarian?
Yes. I mean, to me, it reminds me of like when you go down to a swimming pool or something, it's not the same vocabulary. It's like
So
this.
the Puck building is
Minimal to provide illumination, I think is what we're saying.
interior illumination of the stoop, yeah. So I mean, you look at the Puck building, which is the largest example we have of that interior illuminate, the whole the whole sidewalk wraps around the building and has multiple stoops that are illuminated. I'm okay.
By the cat eyes or whatever you want to call them.
It's the REI building.
No, I know what building. I'm asking you, is it illuminated by the basement cat eyes, as I call them? The what else?
Bullseye.
The vault lights. I say vault
Yeah,
lights.
the bullseye prisms.
But that's different. We don't have that here.
Oh, I see. So you're making a distinction above Houston and below Houston.
Okay, let's stay on this one then. Is it agreeable to say that it should be minimal to provide illumination for safety?
Yes.
Yes.
Something like that.
There's no
Yeah,
precedent.
that sounds smart. That's smart.
Are there other
I don't like I just don't like it. I think it's gonna be really unattractive if everybody starts doing that. Everybody wants to play up their entrance, but the entrance to a mechanical room or electrical room does not need extra lighting. So, even the premise falls apart to me.
So Anita, are you suggesting that we disapprove the lighting aspect of?
Yes, on Mercer St.
All right, I think we should poll everybody and see how people feel about that.
I would agree with Anita. I don't think we should approve it at all, at the lighting.
I would say that the precedential aspects of that, I find, although, in this particular instance, I think, because this whole proposal is generally so commendable and handsome and tasteful, but I do think that the precedential aspect of approving this particular type of illumination is potentially regrettable, and I would support Anita's suggestion to not approve this lighting in this context.
is it that we're not approving this choice of lighting or lighting?
This choice of lighting.
What is the choices to illuminate from?
We don't have any
Internally.
alternatives. We just disapprove this lighting, I would say. This
Okay.
particular lighting. We don't have to say, show us something else, because maybe we don't need any lighting there.
Didn't another application like sometime last year on West Broadway that had a similar
They did, yeah.
set? And then I remember we asked if there was historical precedent for it and they could not find that they were in the past illuminated.
Well, they could be historical precedent when people were working down there in Gaslight.
But yeah, but
You
they're
would have
not.
seen it.
We
It wasn't
don't
like
have to
lit for
say
the purpose.
anything more than that we recommend denial of the lighting as provided for in the application.
Yeah, I don't recommend denial. I support it in your language of for safety.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Does anyone else disagree with recommend denial of the lighting as presented? Which is not saying that something else, they can't come up with something more modest. Okay. Is that it for this application?
Yeah, I just want to say also that I think it's a really handsome and commendable application, and we see so many applications where there are kind of specious arguments made about how things that are completely non-contextual, we should see as contextual and all of this. And I really applaud this design for how it has integrated and synthesized so many really significant aspects of dealing with storefronts in a historic district. Well done.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, so to wrap,
And also, it was throughout, it was a gentle intervention.
yeah,
Yes.
We have a meeting on Monday that has grown by one application at the last possible moment. And I have we have a new letter to send to the applicants, asking them to have the, as I said at the beginning, ask them to have the applications in a week ahead, even if a revised version must be sent later and the revised version the day before. So we're not cramming at the end. And also, it's impossible to make a sane schedule without knowing something more than the brief description.
Right. Chanel, do you want to ask if there's any new business?
The what?
Do you want to ask if there's any new business?
We're going to do that at the next meeting. I'll ask, but no.
but you don't want to know. Okay.
I'd like to make a comment.
Yeah.
One, I think we need to have new business in general. Two, I think we could have done all of the applicants for this month, this evening. I think it's hard. We barely got quorum today. We'll just make that as a general comment. And then
Can you get near the mic and maybe speak?
Sure.
It's
I would like, number one, I missed my first comment. Oh, number one, I think it's incorrect to not have new business or an opportunity for someone to
You
present
have some new
something.
business.
Number two, I think that, what was my second point? Sorry, do not feel well.
Put them together.
Oh, that I think with the number of applications we had for this month, that asking this committee to meet twice, I think we could have gone through all of the applications in one evening. We barely made quorum tonight. And then my third point is it was very nice to be in person. I really enjoyed the dialogue in person, and I hope that we have an opportunity to have applicants return in person as well. I think it's an enriched experience, and I think it actually makes the meeting shorter. Thank you.
Okay. Is there new business that is urgent for tonight? We have a shorter meeting on Monday. It would seem that anything could wait until then.
So will we be discussing the 277 Canal Street project in light of what Brendan sent around on Monday?
Okay. It's just a question of time between the two, because it's virtually one meeting and an adjourned meeting, I suppose, technically.
Okay.
The one thing that's the problem of making the meetings and how many there are is just the impossible thing of not knowing ahead what is what, and we hope to correct that.
well, Chanel, thank you for making sure that we are as adaptable and as receptive as possible, because it is a cumbersome project for homeowners to go through, and if we make it a little less difficult, that's a good thing. So
You can make it less difficult for the committee and the
no, yeah, but less difficult for the homeowners. I mean, a month is a long time to wait if you're a normal person, and trying to do a project and the money and the stress. So I just like that we try to accommodate the applicants as best we can, and I know you do.
Right, and we do, but on
I
the
know.
other hand, for us to give proper consideration, getting a application in the day before is not.
I hear you.
All of these projects are months or at least numbers of weeks, if not months in preparation. And they always just seem to careen in at the last minute. And they're particular presenters, which is the
That's the nature of the work, that's like theater, last minute is when it all comes together.
Perhaps we can make a distinction between project scope. So perhaps a large new building is a different situation than what, like, for example, one of a small homeowner.
Not just me.
Oh, wow. I think you have to treat everybody the same and be as accommodating as possible. That's my recommendation.
Could I ask about the new business? Because I didn't hear from Brendan. If you wanted to raise your new business tonight versus Monday?
Monday is better, I think.
Okay.
And then I do think that I'd like to maybe add another piece, is like, what do we do now that 277 had no action? Question, does that come back to us with the revised design, or does it go straight?
It is, this one certainly will not.
Yeah.
It will not?
Things only come back to us if there are just gross changes.
I mean, I would support Brendan's role. Brendan, I was supportive of your idea to just have this discussion in landmarks because it is so, it is such a milestone to have these new taller buildings as of right post rezone. So I think that it is worth a greater discussion.
Yeah, can we do that on Monday when we have more time?
Yeah, essentially, we hear an application comes to us when it comes. What's presented is presented. We're death on that it must be reasonably conforming to what's brought to the commission. And they have a couple times over the years sent them back because they were too much changed and they weren't getting the feedback from us. And rarely, that it's very, very rare that something comes back.
Understood. Is that what you were talking about, Eugene?
For example, the penthouse on Canal Street is not something that would come back.
Sorry, what?
I think I was more talking in general. You were not about the specific application, but the relationship of Soho to, the National Registry of Historic.
Right.
It's going to take time for all this on Monday, and that's been decided. So why don't we leave it for them?
Yeah.
Like, Eugene, would you just be sure to send the updated attendance, because it's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure because of the little camp. I mean, everyone in the conference room is really tiny to me. We didn't have Susan Wittenberg show up tonight, did we?
No.
Okay,
No.
that's the only person I wasn't sure.
Is she on this committee?
No.
No, she's not. She showed up last time, so I always take last month's attendance and move it into this month.
Thanks for checking, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Oh, Mother's Day.
Yeah.
You know how to
I know you guys will miss me on Monday. I will be in DC.
locked up somehow, shut down.
Oh, I'll be gone on Monday too.
Well, thanks for your help tonight, Eugene. It was really
Thanks.
tremendously.
I thought it went really well, Susan, from the Zoom perspective, it was really easy to tell who was speaking. So that was a great job with introducing everyone when they spoke.
Yes. Well, thanks for your tips earlier. That I really.
Another mic in the room would be a help, I believe.
Yeah, more lights would be helpful, but it was much better than the land use meeting we had yesterday.
We try to take some of your suggestions.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Who's going to stop it?